How you open a meeting will set the tone for the whole meeting. So as a chair, I think it is your responsibility to act as a host. So in this video, I want to look at what it takes to open a meeting well and to act as a great meeting host. You've prepared your meeting and planned it well. Your next responsibility is to turn up early and to meet and greet your guests. Yes, people who are coming to your meeting are your guests and you have a responsibility to host. And in meeting and greeting people, your responsibilities are firstly to make sure that people are introduced to one another, and secondly that you reinforce and strengthen your relationship with each of them. And of course, if you don't know some of the people who are attending your meeting, you need to get to know them early. So be at the meeting place before anyone else arrives, and as each person arrives, host them, greet them. If there's refreshments, offer them a refreshment, ask them about themselves, find out about them. And if there's someone you know, a great tip is to talk about frogs. Frogs is an acronym that I learned from a former client of mine named Malcolm Gribble. And Malcolm was a consummate salesperson, and therefore building relationships was part of his skill set. And he advised me that if you want to strengthen a relationship with someone, then the best thing to talk about was frogs. And frogs is an acronym for the 5 things that it is safe and convenient to talk to people about that they will enjoy talking with you about. It allows you to steer clear of controversial topics and therefore strengthen your relationship. F stands for friends, people that you have in common or friends of theirs that you at least know or know about. Asking about these people is a great way to show interest in what's important to them. And of course, moving on from friends to family, R stands for relations and relationships. So ask about partners, about family members, about children, about family life. O stands for organisations, organisations that you have in common. They may have worked at some point at an organisation that you've worked for or that you've done business with. So that gives you something in common to talk about. And G stands for geography. Another great thing to talk about is shared geography. If you went to college at the same place they grew up, you've got something to talk about. If you've recently visited a town where they once worked, you've got something to talk about. And S stands for social or sport, which for some people is the same thing. If you know what interests them, whether it's sports, competitive sports that they participate in, or sports that they follow, or social activities that they engage in, then that's another great conversation starter. Once you've met and greeted everyone, you've welcomed them, you've got them the refreshments they need, it's time to start the meeting. And ideally, you want to start on time, because my preference is to set 2 meeting start times. The time you're going to start the formal business and the time you want people to arrive from, so that they can be ready for that start. In kicking off the formal part of the meeting, one of the most important things you can do is to set the mood and actually state your expectations about the kind of behaviours, the kind of attitudes you want people to adopt. Always put on your game face, be positive and enthusiastic about what it is you're trying to do. And of course, whilst you're setting expectations, clearly state the outcomes that you hope to achieve by the end of the meeting. And then describe the process that you're going to take people through. Set out the agenda. If it's the kind of meeting that has ground rules or strict behavioural expectations, then set those out. The typical example of that would be issues of confidentiality and expecting people to not share what's discussed in the meeting outside of the room or only with certain people. Sometimes this is known as Chatham House rules, the idea that what is said in the room stays in the room, or more precisely, among the people who are in the room. But a good example of the kind of rules you may want to set are particularly around decision making. We're here to make certain decisions, and this is the way we're going to make them. And this is where you'll spell out whether you're going to be voting, whether you're going to be having a show of hands or secret ballot type voting, whether you're looking for a broad consensus or absolute unanimity or just a majority. So what are the processes you're going to use, and how do you need people to behave to conform to those processes appropriately? Also, at the start of the meeting, it's crucial that everyone knows who everyone is. If you've done the meet and greet well, then you will have already introduced people to one another. But it does no harm, unless you know everybody knows everybody else well, to go once around the meeting table asking people to introduce themselves with their name and their affiliation, who they're representing. That way, if I've met you for the first time, I might remember your name, but I can write it down and make sure that I've got it. As chair, if you're not familiar with everyone in the room, then I would certainly recommend you draw yourself a meeting map so that you've got in front of you that kind of map of the room with all the names, so that you don't find yourself getting caught out and forgetting who someone is. And once you've introduced people, invite everyone to participate. We'll look in another video at the importance of your role as chair, making sure everyone is heard and can participate. But by inviting people and letting them know that that's an expectation you have and that you'll be facilitating that, you're setting up the mood. Because the vital component of opening any meeting is to establish your authority as chair, as the facilitator of the meeting, and therefore as the person who is going to not only control the structure and flow and process of the meeting, but ensure that the meeting is worthwhile and achieves its outcome. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. There's loads more great management courses content to come, so please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. I'll see you in the next video, and in the meantime, keep learning.